Bride's racist family disrespects groom's black grandmother. Then they get the shock of their lives. Marcus's grip tightened on the steering wheel as the GPS announced their arrival. The sprawling Whitmore estate loomed ahead, its manicured, lawns and stone facade more intimidating than welcoming. Lord have mercy, Miss Hattie whispered beside him, adjusting her Sunday hat. This place bigger than our whole neighborhood. Marcus smiled at his grandmother. You ready for this, Gran? Been ready 78 years, baby, she replied, patting his hand. Question is, are they ready for us? The question lingered as they pulled up to the entrance. Emily burst through the doors, her blonde hair catching sunlight as she rushed toward them. You made it. She embraced Marcus tightly, then turned to Miss Hattie. I'm so happy you're here, Miss Hattie. Before his grandmother could respond, Emily's parents appeared in the doorway. Gerald Whitmore's firm handshake betrayed the coldness in his eyes. Welcome to our home, he said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Emily's been talking about nothing else for days. Denise Whitmore stood slightly behind her husband, her gaze sweeping over Miss Hattie's floral dress and sensible shoes. Charmed, she said flatly. Miss Hattie reached into her purse. Brought something for the house, she said, presenting a small, carefully wrapped package. My own blackberry preserves. Secret recipe. Denise took it with 2 fingers, as if handling something. Unpleasant. How it and quaint. I'm sure the kitchen staff will find some use for it. Marcus felt heat rising in his neck, but Miss Hattie's gentle touch on his arm steadied him. Let me show you to your rooms, Emily said quickly, her voice pitched higher than normal. Mom had the east wing prepared. As they followed Emily inside, Marcus caught the exchange of glances between her parents. The silent disapproval hung in the air like a storm cloud. This weekend was going to be exactly as he'd feared. Your people certainly know how to make an impression, Gerald muttered to his daughter, just loud enough for Marcus to hear. Emily's shoulders tensed. Dad, please. Miss Hattie pretended not to notice, her dignity wrapping around her like armor. But Marcus noticed everything, every smirk, every whisper. He said nothing, storing each slight away, wondering how many more he could endure before the facade of civility crumbled entirely. Beautiful place you got, Miss Hattie offered kindly as they ascended the grand staircase. It's been in Gerald's family for generations, Denise replied coolly. Some traditions are worth preserving, don't you think? The implication wasn't lost on anyone. Marcus exchanged a look with his grandmother, whose eyes communicated what words couldn't. This was only the beginning. The chandelier light glinted off crystal glasses as servers circulated through the rehearsal dinner. Marcus scanned the room, his jaw clenching when he spotted Miss Hattie seated at a distant table with distant cousins and +1s. The family table up front remained conspicuously full, with no space for his grandmother. Everything okay? Emily asked, touching his arm. They put Gran at the back, Marcus said quietly. Why isn't she with the family? Emily's eyes darted nervously to her mother. I'm sure it was just a seating oversight. Was it? The conversation paused as Gerald tapped his glass. Welcome, everyone. Tomorrow our Emily marries Marcus, beginning a new chapter. His smile tightened as he added, changes come to every family, ready or not. Marcus felt the sting beneath the words. Across the room, Miss Hattie sat straight-backed and dignified, sipping water while those around her drank champagne. During the third course, Miss Hattie made her way to their table, stopping to greet Emily's parents. Lovely party you're throwing. Reminds me of the garden socials we used to host back home. Denise's eyebrow arched. Oh? I wasn't aware housing projects had garden space. Mother, Emily whispered sharply. Miss Hattie's smile never faltered. Our neighborhood's modest, but we make beautiful things grow there all the same, Gerald chuckled. Charming perspective. I suppose that's what they call making lemonade from lemons. The table fell silent. Marcus half rose from his chair, but Emily's fingers dug into his wrist. Please, she whispered. Not here. He swallowed, hard watching Miss Hattie return to her distant table, alone but unbowed. Later that night, Marcus paced the guest room floor while Miss Hattie sat calmly in the armchair. I can't believe they would... His voice broke with anger. We should leave, Gran, tonight. And what would that solve? She asked. Sit down, child. You're wearing out their fancy carpet. How can you be so calm after how they treated you? Miss Hattie's weathered hands smoothed her dress. Because I've seen this movie before, baby. People who stand on pedestals always worry about falling. We don't have to take this. Sometimes, she said wisely, people need to choke on their own pride before they can taste humility. Let them eat it slow, Marcus. Let them eat it slow. Her eyes held a certainty that calmed his rage, though he couldn't understand the source of her confidence. Trust me, she said. Pride comes before the fall. Always has. Marcus couldn't sleep. Moonlight streamed through the guest room window as memories washed over him. He remembered being 8 years old, sitting at Miss Hattie's kitchen table after his mother's funeral, unable to eat. Look at me, child, she had said, tilting his chin up. Pain's gonna come in this life, but you stand tall through it, you hear me? Nobody can take your dignity unless you hand it over. Those words had carried him through elementary school bullies, through college classrooms where professors overlooked his raised hand, through job interviews where surprise flashed across faces when he walked in. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Emily slipped inside, her face strained. I'm sorry about dinner, she whispered, sitting beside him on the bed. They're just old-fashioned. Old-fashioned, Marcus exhaled slowly. Is that what we're calling it now? They'll come around. They just need time. Time for what, Emily? To accept I'm human. He rubbed his temples. You promised they were okay with us. They are, she hesitated. Mostly, Dad's business partners are traditional. He's worried about appearances. Marcus stared at her. And what about you? Are you worried about appearances too? That's not fair. Tears welled in her eyes. I chose you, didn't I? I'm standing here with you. Are you? Because I haven't heard you say a word when they disrespect my grandmother. Emily's voice dropped to a desperate whisper. Please, Marcus, don't ruin the wedding. We've come so far. After she left, Marcus wandered downstairs for water and found Miss Hattie in the garden gazing at the stars. Couldn't sleep either, he asked. Just having a conversation with your grandpa. She smiled. He always liked looking at the night sky. Marcus sat beside her. I don't know if I can go through with this, Gran. Love's never simple, she said. Question is whether it's worth fighting for. What if the fight never ends? Miss Hattie reached into her handbag, touching an envelope he hadn't noticed before. Some fights end when truth comes to light. Been holding on to this particular truth for 30 years. What's that? She tucked it away again. Insurance policy. Just in case the good Lord needs my help teaching a lesson about humility. Her mysterious smile reminded him of when she'd catch him in childhood lies, always knowing more than she let on. Everything happens when it's supposed to, she said. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow needs your strength. Wedding day dawned clear and bright. A perfect sky mocking the storm brewing inside. Marcus found himself alone in bed, Emily having left early for hair and makeup. He showered quickly, determined to check on Miss Hattie before the ceremony. He approached the kitchen. Gerald's voice carried through the doorway. Don't understand why she needs to be in the family photos. Can't she just sit quietly somewhere? We're already accommodating enough having her here. Marcus froze mid-step. Sir, I'm not in charge of the photography schedule, replied a staff member. Well, someone should be managing these charity cases. Bad enough my daughter's marrying into that family. Do we need their poverty on display too? The coffee mug in Marcus's hand crashed to the floor. He stepped into the kitchen, eyes locked on Gerald. What did you just say about my grandmother? His voice was dangerously quiet. Gerald straightened, momentarily startled before regaining his composure. Marcus, didn't realize you were eavesdropping. Didn't realize you were insulting the woman who raised me. Now, son, you're being overly sensitive. We come from different worlds. I am not your son. Marcus stepped closer. And Miss Hattie has more class in her little finger than you have. In your entire body. Gerald's face reddened. How dare you speak to me like that in my own home? How dare you speak about my grandmother like she's beneath you? The kitchen staff quietly disappeared as Emily rushed in, still in her robe. What's happening? I can hear you from upstairs. Your father thinks my grandmother is a charity case who shouldn't be in family photos. Emily turned to her father. Dad, please tell me that's not true. Gerald smoothed his tie. Emily, There are standards to maintain. Our friends—" "Don't," she interrupted, tears forming. "Just don't. Either you apologize," Marcus said to Gerald, "or there won't be a wedding today." "Are you threatening me?" Gerald sputtered. "In my own house? I'm promising you. Then leave, take your threats and your—" "Gerald!" Denise appeared, horror on her face. "The guest will hear you." Miss Hattie entered silently, taking in the scene with calm eyes. "Always chaos before a blessing," she observed. Gerald pointed at her. "This is your doing. Your grandson has no respect." "Respect is earned, Mr. Whitmore," Miss Hattie replied evenly. "You may own the mansion, but you don't own the truth." Something in her tone made Gerald pause, uncertainty flickering across his face as Emily collapsed into tears between them. Marcus followed Miss Hattie to the quiet of the garden, leaving the chaos behind. Emily's sobs still echoed in his ears, but his grandmother's calm demeanor drew him like a compass needle to north. "Gran, I'm sorry. I couldn't stand by anymore. No need to apologize for standing up for what's right." She settled onto a stone bench. "Sit with me a minute. I think the wedding's off." His voice cracked. "Maybe that's for the best. Maybe. Or maybe it's time for some truth." She reached into her handbag, withdrawing the envelope he'd glimpsed the night before. "There's something you should know about Mr. High and Mighty Whitmore," Marcus frowned. "What?" 30 years ago, before you were born, Gerald's company was sinking fast. Bankruptcy papers were drawn up. Your grandfather caught wind of it through a friend at the bank. Grandpa Joe, but he was a janitor at the school. Miss Hattie smiled. "By day. But your grandpa was smart with his money, had investments all over. He saw potential in Whitmore Industries when nobody else would touch it. He invested in Mr. Whitmore's company, under my maiden name, anonymous to Gerald. The contract specified I'd remain a silent partner. Your grandfather thought it would be better that way." Marcus stared at the yellowed envelope. "Why didn't you ever say anything? Wasn't relevant until now." She opened the envelope, revealing notarized documents. "These papers make me co-founder and 20% owner of what's now a billion-dollar company. Your grandpa's investment saved Gerald from ruin." Marcus's mouth fell open as he scanned the legal language, the signatures, the official seals. "Does he know?" "He knows someone saved him. Never bothered to learn who. Too busy becoming important." She tucked the papers away. "Sometimes God delays revenge so people can bury themselves deep enough first. What are you going to do with this?" Miss Hattie patted his hand. "The question is what we're going to do. My name's on those papers, but this moment belongs to both of us." Marcus looked toward the house where guests had begun to arrive. "Emily doesn't deserve to be humiliated." "No, she doesn't. But neither do we." Miss Hattie stood slowly. "Truth isn't about humiliation. It's about liberation." The garden transformed into a wedding venue, white chairs arranged in perfect rows beneath flowering archways. Marcus stood in a side room, adjusting his tie, while Emily's cousin attempted small talk. "So, everything okay? Heard some commotion earlier." "Just pre-wedding jitters," Marcus replied flatly. Through the window, he watched guests filing in. Gerald's business associates in expensive suits, Emily's sorority sisters in pastel dresses. His own friends looked like islands in the sea of unfamiliar faces. The wedding planner rushed in. 5 minutes, gentlemen." Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Emily. "I love you. No matter what." He stared at the screen, conflicted. After their argument, Emily had disappeared with her mother. No resolution, just an expectation to proceed as planned. Outside, Miss Hattie appeared in a sky-blue dress, her silver hair elegantly styled. As she moved toward the back row where elderly relatives had been seated, Gerald made a dismissive gesture to the usher, confirming her placement. What happened next caught Marcus by surprise. His former professor, Dr. Williams, stood from his third-row seat. "Excuse me," he said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "This distinguished lady shouldn't be sitting in the back." An older woman Marcus didn't recognize joined in. "Isn't she the groom's grandmother? She should be up front." Miss Hattie raised a hand. "Now, no need to fuss." "There absolutely is need," insisted Dr. Williams, offering his arm. "Please take my seat." Several other guests murmured agreement, creating a ripple effect. Gerald stepped forward, his composure slipping. "The seating has been arranged very specifically." "Then it was specifically arranged incorrectly," Dr. Williams replied, firmly. The officiant, watching the scene unfold, approached Gerald. "Is there a problem here?" "No problem," Gerald said through gritted teeth. "Just a misunderstanding about seating." "Well, in my experience," the officiant said, "the grandmother of the groom sits in the front row. Perhaps you'd like to take your seat, sir, so we can begin." Gerald's face flushed as he retreated, Denise clutching his arm with a horrified expression. Miss Hattie graciously accepted the front row seat, nodding thanks to those who had spoken up. As the music began, Marcus caught her eye from his position at the altar. She gave him the slightest of smiles, not triumphant but knowing. The shift had begun, silent but powerful, like the first tremor before an earthquake. The traditional wedding march began as Emily appeared at the end of the aisle. She looked ethereal in white, though her eyes betrayed lingering distress. Marcus watched her approach, his heart a battlefield of love and righteous anger. The officiant smiled broadly. "We are gathered here today." Marcus felt the weight of the moment pressing down. Emily's trembling hand in his. Gerald and Denise watching from the front row, masks of civility firmly in place. Miss Hattie sitting quietly, the envelope in her purse. "Before we continue," Marcus said suddenly, interrupting the officiant mid-sentence, "there's something I need to say." A confused murmur rippled through the guests. Emily's eyes widened. "Marcus," she whispered. "I apologize for the interruption," he said, turning to address the gathered crowd. "But this marriage needs to start with honesty." Gerald half rose from his seat. "Young man, this is hardly the time." "It's exactly the time," Marcus replied firmly. "For 2 days, my grandmother has been treated as less than human in this house. Shunned, insulted, relegated to the back as if her presence embarrasses this family." Shocked gasps punctuated the silence. "What you don't know about Miss Hattie," Marcus continued, "is that 30 years ago, her husband saved Whitmore Industries from bankruptcy." Denise's face drained of color. Gerald froze in his half-standing position. Marcus turned to Miss Hattie, who nodded almost imperceptibly, reaching into her purse for the envelope. He walked to her, took the documents, and returned to the altar. "These papers prove that Miss Hattie Johnson is a silent co-founder and 20% owner of the company that built this estate, paid for this wedding, and finances the lifestyle the Whitmores have enjoyed for decades." He handed the papers to Gerald, whose hands shook as he unfolded them. "My grandfather invested under my grandmother's maiden name. He believed talent should be supported regardless of color. He never asked for recognition, never demanded a seat at the table." Emily's tears flowed freely now. "Marcus, I had no idea." "I know you didn't." He faced her parents. "But they might have, if they'd ever bothered to learn who saved them instead. Of assuming they did it all themselves." Gerald stared at the documents, recognition dawning. "Madison Holdings, that was you?" Miss Hattie stood, her dignity radiating through the garden. "My husband believed in people's potential, Mr. Whitmore, even when they couldn't see past the color of his skin." Marcus turned back to the stunned audience. "The question now is whether there's still a wedding to have." Gerald clutched the papers, his world visibly crumbling. Without a word, he stormed down the aisle and toward the house. Denise hesitated, glancing between her husband and the crowd before hurrying after him. The guests erupted in whispers. Emily stood frozen at the altar, mascara tracking down her cheeks. "I think," the officiant said gently, "perhaps we should take a moment. Everyone, please help yourselves to refreshments while the family resolves some matters." Marcus turned to Emily. "I'm sorry it had to happen this way." "All this time," she whispered, "they knew someone saved the company. Dad always called them anonymous investors with excellent timing. He built his whole identity on pulling himself up by his bootstraps." The officiant approached them quietly. "Would you like me to postpone the ceremony? There would be no shame in that." Marcus looked at Emily, then at Miss Hattie, who was now the center of attention as guests gathered around her. "I love you," he told Emily. "But I won't marry shame. I can't bring children into a family that would treat their great-grandmother like she's beneath them. Emily grasped his hands. Please, give me another chance to stand up for what's right. I was afraid before, but I'm not anymore. Across the garden, Miss Hattie gracefully accepted the attention without gloating. When asked how she felt, she simply shook her head. It was never about me, she told the circle of interested listeners. It's about how you treat people when you think they can't fight back. The Lord sees everything, even when we think nobody's watching. Why didn't you ever tell us? I didn't know until this morning, Marcus admitted. She kept that secret for 30. Marcus's college roommate, David, embraced him. Man, your grandma is a legend. Years. What happens now? David asked. Marcus watched as Emily moved through the crowd toward Miss Hattie. She knelt before the older woman, speaking earnestly through tears, holding her hands. Miss Hattie nodded, then pulled Emily into an embrace. Now, Marcus said, we see what people do when the truth forces them to face themselves. An hour passed. Guests mingled uncertainly while caterers exchanged worried glances. Then Emily emerged from the house alone. Having changed from her elaborate gown into a simple white sundress, she approached Marcus, who stood with Miss Hattie under the willow tree. I've spoken to my parents, she said, her voice steady despite reddened eyes. I told them I can't be part of their prejudice anymore. Marcus studied her face. And? They said I was choosing strangers over blood. She took a deep breath. So I walked out. I told them when they're ready to apologize to Miss Hattie and truly welcome you into the family, I'll answer their calls. Miss Hattie touched her arm. Child, family's important. Don't burn bridges you might need to cross again. Some bridges need burning, Miss Hattie, Emily replied. My parents built their fortune on your husband's generosity, then treated you like dirt. I won't be part of that legacy, she turned to Marcus. I understand if today isn't our day anymore. But I'm hoping you'll still want to build a life with me, just not the life my parents planned. Marcus felt the weight of decision. The hurt was fresh, the betrayal deep. Yet looking at Emily standing there, choosing right over easy, love over, status, he saw the woman he'd fallen for. Are you sure about this? He asked. Your whole world is in that house. No, Emily shook her head. My whole world is standing right here. Miss Hattie smiled. Well then. Seems to me there's still a wedding to have. Emily glanced at the elaborate setup, now half abandoned. Not this wedding. Not here. Then where? Marcus asked. Right here under this willow tree. Just us, Miss Hattie, and whoever wants to celebrate. Love that crosses all boundaries. Within minutes, word spread. The officiant returned to his position. Marcus's friends gathered close, while most of Emily's society connections had discreetly departed with mumbled excuses. Standing beneath the willow's sweeping branches, with Miss Hattie as their witness, Marcus and Emily exchanged simple vows. No pretense, no prejudice, just truth. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the officiant declared. As they sealed their union with a kiss, Miss Hattie dabbed at her eyes. Joseph, she whispered to the heavens, your investment finally paid off today. 3 weeks after the wedding, Marcus scrolled through his phone in disbelief. The story had gone viral after one of Emily's cousins shared it online. Gran, you're trending on Twitter, he called out, showing Miss Hattie the screen as she entered their new living room. Hattie's revenge and her silent partner are everywhere, she waved dismissively. Lord have mercy, people need more important things to worry about. Emily appeared from the kitchen with tea. The company stock dropped 12% when the story broke. Dad's been forced to make a public statement. What did he say? Marcus asked. Acknowledged the oversight in company history and announced a diversity initiative named after Grandpa Joe. Emily smiled sadly. Too little, too late, but it's something. Miss Hattie sipped her tea thoughtfully. People don't change overnight. Pride takes time to dissolve. A knock at the door revealed a delivery man with a large envelope. Inside was a stack of letters addressed to Miss Hattie Johnson. What in the world, she murmured, opening the first one. Dear Miss Hattie, Marcus read over her shoulder. Your story inspired me to finally confront the racism in my own family. Thank you for your dignity and strength. Emily opened another. My grandmother worked as a housekeeper for a wealthy family who never knew she was putting herself through. Night school. Your story is hers too. Letter after letter shared similar sentiments, stories of invisible contributions, silent strength, and long overdue recognition. What will you do with all this attention, Gran? Marcus asked. Miss Hattie placed the letters aside. Same thing I've always done. Keep living right and lifting others. Fame is just noise. She moved to the window, gazing at their modest new home's backyard, where she'd spent the morning planting. Come see what I started out back, she said. They followed her outside to where a small oak sapling stood in freshly turned soil. Planted one just like this when you were born, she told Marcus. Now I'm planting one for your children to come. Emily placed a hand unconsciously over her stomach, a gesture not lost on Miss Hattie, who smiled knowingly. Already, Marcus whispered to Emily, who nodded with teary eyes. How did you know? Emily asked Miss Hattie. Same way I knew 30 years ago that your daddy's company would be worth saving. Miss Hattie patted the soil around the sapling. Some things you just feel in your bones. Marcus wrapped his arms around both women, the past's bitter wounds beginning to heal in the soil of this new beginning. Let the world talk, Miss Hattie said, watching the leaves dance in the breeze. We're busy building something better.